Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Rainbow Factory Part 3. I must say, this is the longest piece of fanfiction I have ever had the pleasure of reading, and I have to say I'm enjoying it quite a lot. Alright, here we go. Rainbow Factory Part 3. With nods, 3 of them at the rear leaned forward and jabbed each of the Pegasus with tasers, shocking them to the ground. Dr. Atmosphere whinnied in laughter as they all yelped and fell, and continued into a soft chuckle as they all stood up again. Scootaloo blinked more tears from her eyes and shook herself again, trying to lose the tingling in her nerves. She turned and quickly looked at each of the suited ponies, catching each of them in the eye when she could. None of them were the rose-eyed pony from the carriage. Begrudgingly, she started to walk behind the Red Engineer.
"You simply must be careful in this department,"
Dr. Atmosphere began in a tone not unlike many tour guides in the lower floors.
"There's plenty of nooks and crannies and vents and vats one could fall into. One must be careful not to hurt themselves. After all, you're all hopeless as it is. Any more so, and even we couldn't choose you."
He glanced behind himself maliciously as the 3 foals frowned in insult. They were walking down a series of halls with vibrating machines and assembly lines lining the way, occasionally ducking under low-hanging wires or carefully stepping over steaming pipes. As they walked, though, the building became cooler and cooler. All 3 were watching, sensing, looking for any way out. They couldn't see any.
"Now let me tell you a story. Cloudsdale is where the weather is made. Without us, the rest of Equestria would starve, freeze, drown, and generally be a not very happy place. That gives us a special honor, one that cannot be tainted by, incompetent foes like you. How could the world look up and trust us if Pegasi like you are flying around wearing the Cloudsdale name? No, we needed to do something with all of you. And then we got a delicious idea one day over 1,000 years ago. Those were some smart ponies back then, I'll say. You don't find too many of them these days. But I digress. Here now, through these doors quickly now before more encouragement is supplied."
Dr. Atmosphere opened a heavy-looking door in a cramped corridor and offered a hoof inside. Scootaloo stared up at him. He glanced at a suited pony. Scootaloo and the others walked inside as he laughed again.
"Enjoy the rest of your pitiful life."
And with that, he slammed the door closed. They all turned and looked at the big room they had been led into. It was fairly open and empty, almost like a theater room. At one end of the room there were 6 square vats, each one nearly full with individual spectra. Above them was a peculiar-looking machine. From a central stack, 6 hoses broke off and led above each of the individual vats. At the top of the stack was a single opening, red with rust despite the rest of the machine being shiny and clean. Even further above that was a fairly complex-looking object, with chains and gears hanging off of beams and pipes loosely. Running even higher than the whole machine was a length of scaffolding with doors on either side leading out of the room. Down on the floor, a small collection of defeated, crying ponies sat, chatting quietly.
"Those suits, those are from that other flight school across town,"
Aurora informed, sounding shocked.
And those ponies, sitting over there, see? I remember a trip we went on once with the Levitating Acres private school. I remember them from that trip."
"So, this is where all the failures go? Not deported, but forced to work forever?"
Orion sobbed quietly. In exchange for helping someone, he had doomed himself and his good friend to a life of servitude. Scootaloo reached a reassuring wing over and lifted his chin. She smiled at him, understanding his depression.
"At least we don't have to go through it alone,"
she cooed softly. Suddenly, there was a commotion in the group of ex-students. One pony from an unidentified school took off, headed towards one of the doors of the scaffolding. Immediately, 2 suited ponies launched at record speed and both clipped the flyaway with their tasers. The pony spasmed in the air and then dropped like a stone. With an audible crack as he landed, and a violent burst of twitching, all the other ponies walked back, staring horrified at their friend. They watched, hopefully, for a long time. He didn't move. Some cried softly. Most others turned away, too far confused to feel any more emotions.
I guess that option's out,"
Aurora quietly said to no one in particular.
"But you can't fly right now anyways,"
Orion questioned.
"That medic guy, Patches or whatever he was called, he popped my wings back into their joints and bandaged up with my skin torn. I won't be winning any races, but I can fly again."
They slowly walked forwards and joined the group of ponies, looking at each other with understanding sorrow.
"Eyes front and center, you inept mules!"
one of the suited ponies shouted. After the previous display, no one challenged that order and stared at the scaffolding just as one of the doors opened.
How, you ask, are they up to the task? To which the answer is in a simple facility.
A few official-looking Pegasi walked in on the scaffolding and turned to look down on the group with disgust. One of them stood onto a small podium set up in the center and began speaking loudly and clearly.
By now, you've all clearly determined that you're not going into exile. There is no deportation. There never was. You are in the factory. You will never leave the factory, and while you may be called useless, that's also not entirely true. You're worthless to the flock as a pony. But you still have a purpose. Purpose to all ponies in this land, far and wide. You'll get to help us make rainbows. Beautiful, magical rainbows. Doesn't that excite you?
The mysterious announcer grinned ecstatically, taking in all the disgusted looks from every foal on the floor below him.
I thought so,
he chuckled.
It is just such an honor, you know. It leaves every pony entrusted with the task speechless, too. Now, do we have any volunteers?
Again, every pony below glared with hate. One brave pony, a light pink one from the Levitating Acres school, walked forward a few steps, then yelled.
How could you ever get away with this? How could Celestia or even Luna know about this and tolerate it? It's slavery! It's torture! I think you'll find it's more than that.
A second official pony walked out of the shadows and up to the podium. The pony was in a suit and masked. The first pony walked off the podium and allowed the second to talk. Scootaloo noticed that it was the rose-eyed pony from before. She watched more intently now. The voice was familiar.
1,000 years ago, when Celestia banished Luna from Equestria and sent her to the moon, she was charged with 3 tasks. She originally was in charge of raising the sun and showering the land with rainbows. But with the moon being an additional task, she had to hand down the responsibility of rainbows. Celestia entrusted the Pegasi of Cloudsdale to make the rainbows for her from then on. For the first dozen years, we were given powerful unicorns to help create spectra. Spectra is pure pigment, pure color. Everything is full of spectra, but you can't just harvest it. You can never separate color from an object, so it was made artificially with magic.
The masked pony never took her eyes off the brave pink one.
That is, until our top engineers made a breakthrough. They discovered an ingenious way to extract pigment, and it was so beautiful, even a simple machine could do it. But it couldn't be done with just anything. The conditions had to be right. What did those horrible ponies do?
The pink Pegasus screamed, growing angrier by the minute. The mysterious pony whipped off her mask, unveiling more than her rose eyes. Her skin was a light cyan, and her mane was a gorgeous rainbow. Several of the fillies gasped. Scootaloo's knees weakened as it hit her. It was Rainbow Dash. Scootaloo's thoughts raced through her mind, and the room started spinning. It couldn't be. An evil twin, maybe. Perhaps some neglected sister. Rainbow Dash couldn't be this evil. She was her friend, her mentor, her only family, even if not by blood. How? How was all she could think.
It had to be live ponies. Only in ponies where magic and spectra ran freely together.
Rainbow Dash threw her head back and laughed manically.
Only then could the spectra be separated. And it was such a beautiful idea. Such a wonderfully horrible idea. It worked so well. We could create exponentially more rainbows of better quality than with real spectra. And it finally gave us a way to prevent Cloudsdale from being tainted by all those horrible Pegasus which couldn't fly.
Scootaloo couldn't take it. While all the other ponies were exclaiming their disgust and fear, running and screaming for where they came in, backing off as soon as ponies surrounded them and herded them back into the center of the floor, Scootaloo couldn't take it anymore.
I thought you loved me!
She wailed, cutting Rainbow Dash's laughter short.
Huh?
She turned and noticed the amber-orange Pegasus.
I thought you loved me! How could you do this to me? I thought you cared for me! After all that help! All my life you treated me like a sister! And I treated you like my big sister! You were my big sister to me! You are the only family I ever had and you knew it!
Tears were pouring down her face now, obscuring her vision again. Her throat hurt from the crying and shouting, but she couldn't stop her.
After everything, you're just gonna let me die. I tried so hard for you.
She stared at the floor for a moment. Everyone was silent. Then Scootaloo looked up slowly, and while she couldn't see for the sadness in her eyes, she looked straight at Rainbow Dash. Straight into those rosy eyes, past them, and deep into Rainbow Dash herself.
I thought you loved me.
Rainbow Dash returned the look. Her eyes revealed no emotion, no love, no care, only apathy. Slowly, however, they glared at Scootaloo. Pure, seething hate erupted from Rainbow Dash's mouth as she screamed in return.
I did love you! I tried so hard for you! I taught you everything I knew in the hopes that you would pass your test! You had it in you, kid! I knew what they did here. Ever since I performed that sonic rainbow and they approached me, they wanted to find more ways to make Spectrum. They thought that if I was capable of making rainbows, I could make its components. Well, they couldn't. But I learned a lot about this place. I'm the manager here now, you know? I worked my way up in secret, pretending to be only simple weather control. How do you think I could afford that massive house over Ponyville? How do you...
She trailed, shaking her head, remembering her anger suddenly.
I tried all right! It was up to you to save yourself! You didn't just fail yourself! You didn't just fail Cloudsdale! You failed me! You failed me! And that's the worst thing you could have done. You aren't just dead to Cloudsdale now. You're dead to me.
Wow. We are getting into some heavy shit, my friends. This concludes part 3 of Rainbow Factory. I'm going to record part 4 and put that out in just a few minutes.